Do we have a quorum, Todd?
Just checking. It looks like we're at quorum right now.
All right. Give it a minute or two. All right, let's go ahead and get started. You said we do have quorum, Todd?
Yeah, we do.
Great. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Today is November 19th, 4 o'clock for our MPO policy meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. And item number 2 is vote on the approval of the agenda.
Motion.
County second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 3 is vote on the approval of the meeting minutes from the October 15th meeting minutes.
Move. Or
All
second,
right.
County.
Any discussion?
Who was the first?
McCoy.
Thank you.
McCoy and County was second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 4 is consent and vote on the approval of the financial statement. Todd, did you want to give us an update?
Yeah, just real quick, for the next slide. The financial statements were in your packet. Nothing unusual for us this month. I'd recommend approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Todd? Any discussion? I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Bondurant.
Second, McCoy.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 5 is consent and vote on contracts and expenses. Todd, did you want us, I think it's brief.
Yeah, very brief. This is a reimbursement to the city of West Des Moines. They were awarded STPG funds for the University having a courtroom study. They submitted a request to be reimbursed for little over 20,000. Recommend approval.
Any questions or discussions?
Move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 6, this is the portion of the meeting. If there's any public comment on any MPO actions, now is the time to, you can raise your hand and we will call on you and allow you to speak. Is there anybody on the line that would like to do that?
Nobody's raised their hand.
All right. We will move forward on item number 7. It's report and vote on the downtown water trails check plan submittal. I believe, Todd, you're going to give us an update on that.
Yeah, I'll start it off, and then we also have with us Mark Land and Gabe Nelson from Snyder and Associates.
Okay.
McKillen with Great Outdoors Foundation, Central Iowa Water Trails. Go to the next slide. Essentially where we're at is we're submitting preliminary plans, or the team is submitting preliminary plans to the DOT. The work's on schedule. The city and the design team have been reviewing the design quite substantially and often. And the 408 review is starting a little later this month with the Corps. That's been submitted to the Corps. We've also given Central Iowa Trails submitted payment to us for that work, which we forwarded to the Corps. Go to the next slide, and then Gabe's going to take it over from here, I believe, or Mark.
All right. Well, I just had a couple of quick comments. First of all, we appreciate the opportunity to present this information to you today. My name is Mark Land with Snyder and Associates, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Central Iowa Water Trails. Maggie McClellan is also on the line here for the Water Trails, and Gabe Nelson also with Snyder and Associates. So before Gabe jumps in, and he's going to kind of run you through what you're going to see on the drawings, just wanted to comment on the process up to now, and that, as Todd mentioned, there's been a substantial amount of work completed, and it's on a very tight timeline, as you're probably aware. And in order to meet those timelines, we've really had a lot of cooperation with the city of Des Moines and with Polk County to make that happen. And so I think we're on track, as Todd said, to be able to get that done. We're addressing a number of comments that the jurisdictions had, and we anticipate continuing that work until we get down to our June timeline, when all of the comments, all the permits have to be addressed. So we're working hard toward that timeline. And now I'll turn it over to Gabe to talk to you a little bit about what you're seeing on the drawings.
See, good afternoon, Gabe Nelson with Snyder and Associates. I'm working with Mark and Central Iowa Water Trails on this project. Just kind of wanted to give you an overview here. Like Mark said, we submitted the 408. This is about a 60% submittal. We still got a long ways to go, but we've made a lot of progress here in the last 6 to 8 months. Kind of the overview here of the project. So here's Scott Avenue Dam. Originally, you may have heard about the project. We were going to remove the dam. We're actually leaving the dam mostly in place. Kind of that third span down there on the bottom of the drawing. We're actually removing about 2 feet out of the top of the dam. That's where most of the kayakers will pass through. There'll be buoys that kind of direct them towards that span, that third span of the bridge. There's also, you can kind of see, and I don't know if I can point at all, if I can point at my screen, if you can give me permission for that, if you can see that at all. But there's a fish passage through the dam that the dam will also be notched kind of further towards the north bank. And then besides putting some steps onto the face of the dam to prevent the water from kind of rolling over it, that dangerous condition that exists today. That's about all the modifications we're making to the existing dam. As you go further downstream, there'll be a series of drops. So what you see here through what we're calling drop 2, that's kind of where the recreation features are towards the south bank. That's where the kayakers will go through, and you'll have more of the wave features. Kind of in the middle there, as you see that between the 2 drops and then that single drop, that is for fish passage essentially, and then the kind of the more north half of the river is for grade control. So like I said, the dam will still be there. It'll be mostly invisible because it'll be drowned out by the drops that are being placed downstream. Do you want to advance to the next page? So this is what's happening on the south bank. There's still some work to be done here, but basically Scott Avenue would be on the very left side of this page, and this would be the entire south bank along those drops. You can kind of see this would be drop 2 and drop 3 in those last drawings. There's basically you'd enter through kind of a plaza area here. We're still working out. There's kind of some city sewer gate wells and stuff like that. We're still trying to work out with the city what those look like in the future, but basically a series of paths. There's kind of what we're calling an outdoor classroom here, where you could kind of look out over the river, and then a series of accessible paths to be able to get down to the river. And then a series, and then this is, oh, go ahead and advance that. This is Birdland Marina. The marina area is actually kind of here on the north side of our site. This is the Guzman building. What you're seeing here is what we're going to build as part of the build grant project. The building is not part of the build grant project. So basically what we're doing here is a series of parking upgrades, some pass down to the river, kayak launch, for the most part utilizing the existing docks, and then kind of a outdoor terrace area on the south side of the Guzman building. Not really touching anything with Captain Roy's around that site as part of the project. If you want to advance to the next one. So this is kind of a future plan. So maybe some updates to or rehab to the Guzman building. We're still coordinating that. We're basically planning for those improvements in the future, so we don't do anything today that would have to be torn out as part of the build grant. And then someday in the future, probably some parking upgrades and upgrades of the ramp down around Captain Roy's. If you want to advance. So this is Prospect Park. This is the improvements that will be done as part of the build grant. Essentially at Prospect Park, there's a bunch of shoreline stabilization. You can see those weirs, those bendway weirs that go out into the river, help with shore stabilization and fish habitat. Basically a reuse of an existing gangway and docks down to the river, and a new kayak access. Or after the build grant, we'll still use the existing boat ramp. And then we can, we're building a series of trails for access to the river, and then utilizing the existing restrooms, probably some picnic areas, tree plantings, that sort of thing. But that'll be basically what's done at Prospect Park as part of the build grant. If you want to extend to go to the next one. We were planning for some additional improvements. We're basically concepting them out, some new parking lots at Prospect Park, some bioretention area improvements, parking improvements, and then just basically some upgrades to the existing features. Probably a new connection someday up north to the interurban trail, and repaving of Prospect Road, but that's not part of the build grant. But again, we just wanted to plan for those improvements. So anything we're doing today is, we're not having to tear out something in the future as part of that. So where we're at right now with all these projects, the Harriet Street and the Scott Avenue projects, those were submitted for the 408. They're at about a 60% level. We are, because of the build grant, we do have to submit to the Iowa Department of Transportation. We're actually planning on doing that a little earlier than the schedule for the DOT schedule would normally allow for, so we can get that in front of them earlier. We're planning on doing that in mid-December. That would be for all 4 sites. Basically, all 4 sites are kind of their own separate plan sets, but they're all going to be tied into one large project at Letting. So we plan on doing that December, and then we're tracking ahead on schedule for final plan turn-in at the end of June of 2021 for a September of 2021 Iowa DOT letting. And that's something we have to keep tracking on to get our build grant, because there's laws in the legislation. It has to be authorized by that September of 2021 date. So with that, that's all I really had. Is there any questions on the project overall?
Gabe, thank you. Any questions for Gabe?
Oh, I think I skipped Harriet. I'm sorry. This is the downstream of Scott. So I was thinking upstream of Scott, and I'll give you a brief update on this one. I apologize. So this is Harriet Street. This is also part of the build grant. As you can see in the boundary that's outlined there, there's the levee of around Harriet Street would be right about here. On the river side of the levee, we're going to do a new motorized boat access, some trails down there for river access, some bank stabilization. There's actually the motorized boat access is here. The kayak canoe access is here. So those two uses are separate. And then as you get up and over on the land side of the levee, new parking lot improvements, access to the city pump station that's there. These are changing so fast. This actually looks a little different in the most recent submittal since in the last week since we had given these to Todd, where this actually goes up and over the levee and comes down to this first access and ties in. We're coordinating closely with the city of Des Moines on some levee improvement projects that they're doing through here. So we're continuing to coordinate that as well. So now with that, let's go one more. As part of, like I said, not as part of the build grant, but in the future, there's some planned improvements as part of Harriet Street. So this street would be paved at some point in the future. So now if you want to go ahead one more. Okay, so like I said, we've preliminary design for owner review. That was Central Iowa Water Trails, and actually City of Des Moines was reviewing those as well. Actually, Tuesday night, we submitted to the Corps of Engineers. They're reviewing Scott Avenue and the Harriet Street sites. We're tracking ahead a little bit on the preliminary plans, plan to submit those to DOT and let FHWA review those in December. And then tracking ahead for the check plan and the final plan reviews for the September 2021 letting. So those dates are actually, we're trying to anticipate owner reviews, City of Des Moines reviews, those happening earlier than the DOT reviews. So with that, now I'll open it up to any questions.
Gabe, thank you. Any questions for Gabe?
Yeah, Gabe, this is Tom Haddon. So are all these projects you presented tonight or today, are they build grant then?
Yes. So what we were doing, those three regional sites plus the Scott Avenue site, those were all part of the build grant project that we're developing for that September 2021 letting.
What's the cost estimate? Are they staying? I mean, where's the cost estimate now since you're getting further in the drawings?
Yeah, so we're at about a $34 million project right now. We had to do quite a bit of work to try to get those within that budget. So we're, especially at the regional sites, when you see that broad concept, we originally wanted to bite off more of those, but as we've been working through the process, developing the drawings further, we make sure we're building, we're trying to stay within that $34 million budget. Was that
the build grant total?
So the build grant covers about 80%. So the build grant's $25 million.
Okay.
There's a 20% match to that, which is around that $33 to $34 million.
Okay.
Total project.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Gabe, thank you. I know that you guys have been doing a lot of work, and the Central Iowa Water Trails have been doing a lot of work along with the City of Des Moines and our engineering department. So just to thank all of them to work together. We are utilizing a lot of the infrastructure that we have. I know a lot of things were cut out of there that we wanted to do. So I think that we're moving down the right path, and should be an exciting time. This is a voting item. If anyone else doesn't have any questions or discussion, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second, Randleman.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 8 is report and vote on the calendar year 2021 meeting dates. Todd, I think you want to just give us a brief update, and then we can have some discussion if anyone has any problems with those.
I just wanted to get the dates before you, and we'll send those out to everyone as well. But for policy committee, basically standard schedule. We won't have meetings in March, July, or December. Other than that, it's our typical third Thursday of the month. May be a little goofy depending on the partnership trip and if that happens or doesn't happen.
Or if it happens later than May,
Correct.
we'll have to readjust.
Yeah.
Any discussion? All right, this is a voting item.
Motion, Reba.
Second, McCoy.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 9 is report and vote on the FY 2021-2024 Transportation Improvement Program Amendment. Shiroshi is going to give us an update on that.
Yes, thank you. So this is a request to amend the 2021 through 2024 federal fiscal year transportation improvement program. The project is US Highway 6 from Hickman to Douglas Avenue in Des Moines. This project is the state's share of this particular project. The Iowa Department of Transportation has requested an amendment because the cost estimate for the project has gone up. As a result, we need to amend the tip to reflect the change in the federal aid amount as you see here on the slide. With that, staff supports the amendment request by the DOT, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we're seeking an approval from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shiroshi. Any questions?
Move approval.
Trace seconds.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Item number 10 is report and vote on the Iowa DOT mid-performance period adjustment. I believe Z is going to give us an update on that.
Yes. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. Just some quick background on the DOT's mid-performance period adjustments as required from MAP 21. State DOTs and MPOs have to establish targets for performance measures. So in 2018, the Iowa DOT established their 2-year and 4-year targets for their performance measures. The Des Moines MPO supported these targets back then. Now in 2020, the Iowa DOT is in the middle of their 4-year performance period. This is known as the mid-performance period. And during this period, state DOTs can review and adjust their performance targets. Next slide. So with new data available to the Iowa DOT, they're adjusting their 4-year targets. So their original 4-year target for the interstate reliability measure was 99.5, and they are now adjusting to 98.5. And for the truck travel time reliability measure, the original target was 1.14, and they are now adjusting it to 1.21. MPO staff recommends approval of the DOT's adjusted targets.
Z, thank you. Anyone have any questions or discussions for Z?
I would move it, McCoy.
Second to Cook.
Excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Item number 11 is a report on the fiscal year 2021 first quarter financial report from Dylan.
Thank you. So we have before you today the first quarter budget reports. This is from July through September 30th. In terms of the MPO's budget, if you go to the next slide. Here you can see where we're at in terms of those various categories. Most everything we are doing well ahead of schedule. This is simply because we're not in the office that much and using up a lot of these costs.
Hey, Dylan, not to interrupt, but there's some sort of really bad echo or feedback.
Yeah, I'm hearing that as well.
I don't know if everybody can mute theirs if they're not speaking. I think that might help.
Okay, I'll try this again. Let me know if that continues. sounds better. So these categories, most everything we're doing well ahead on, just for the fact that we're not in the office, using up supplies and things like that we typically do. So there's really no concern there. Towards the bottom of this, you can see some of the various special projects that we have. And those, again, we haven't drawn down a lot of costs, or at least we hadn't yet through that first quarter for, speaker series, container locator, some of those types of things either. So overall, we're doing fine. If there's any questions, I'm happy to address those.
Dylan, thank you. Is there any questions for Dylan?
Move approval.
I think it's just a report today, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Correct.
just a report. But thank you. If there's no discussion, we'll move on to item 12, the environmental justice report from Allison.
Thank you. You can go to the next slide, Gunnar. Thanks. Just for a quick refresher, so the environmental justice report looks at high concentrations of traditionally underserved populations, and we are federally mandated to incorporate this into our planning processes, which includes mobilizing tomorrow, which one of the goals is to further the health, safety, and well-being of all residents in the region. We also incorporate this into our passenger transportation plan, and then funding, scoring methodology, and any internal and external initiatives that it is relevant to. Next slide. So here, I just put up a contrasting table so you can see the 2018 and 2020 numbers next to each other. Not great jumps anywhere. The only major one is just a percentage, and that's the households over 65, just jumping from 21.4 to 22.4. And then, as you'll recall, we did change the stratification of this. And so on the bottom table there, you'll see that. So the 0 degrees of disadvantage, those census tracts are 14 of them. And then moving down, there's about 54 that end up in the 4 to 5 or 6 to 7 category, which are visualized on the next slide. Perfect. So on the left, you'll see a map showing how the breakdown of all of the degrees of disadvantage align. So again, we find the regional average for each of these degrees of disadvantage. If there's 1 degree of disadvantage over the regional average, you'll see it in that pale green, and then going down to the accumulation of 7 degrees of disadvantage in that darker purple on the left. And then on the right, you'll see the areas of moderate and highest concern. So those are the 4 to 5 degrees of disadvantage for the moderate concern and 6 to 7 for highest concern. Again, it is concentrated mostly in the urban core, but it is starting to move north and west, sorry. So with that, this is just a report, and I would be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thanks, Allison. Is there any questions for Allison? All right, we'll go ahead and move forward. Item number 13 is a report on the rain campaign update from Allison.
Thank you. So just as a reminder, the rain campaign stemmed from an Iowa Stormwater Education Grant, Section 319, that comes from the US EPA through the Iowa DNR to then the Conservation District, and then the MPO, ISWEP, and the Conservation District, as well as county now, have been working on this together. It is for the implementation of best management practices for stormwater, and then getting that information to the public and creating educational outreach programs. So we dubbed it the RAIN campaign. And when we first started out, we met with a lot of city staff and to see what they wanted out of the campaign to make sure that it was most efficient for everyone. And we found that a lot of the cost share programs were underutilized, and so were the practices. And so we wanted to promote those cost share programs, and then chose one practice that's a little bit more standardized for everyone, and it's more cost efficient, and that's soil quality restoration. Next slide. Thank you, sir. So you'll see there on the left, we had 4 original goals. To one, help build successful programs. And you'll see that we have streamlined some documents to make it easier for people to understand what they need to do, when they need to do it, who they need to contact, and things like that. And since the RAIN campaign has come on, we've actually had new programs come on in West Des Moines, as well as a couple updates throughout the metro, increasing some of their practices that are incorporated in that. We also delivered a variety of marketing tools to the communities, to use. We have flyers and videos and banners and anything your heart could desire. We also wanted to pique the public's interest through experiential tools. Not all of us are very interested in stormwater. It is not a buzz topic really unless there is a flood. And so we incorporated on the top right there, you can see our art. That raincoat stands about 10.5 feet, I believe, and the umbrella about 5.5. So those just helped us draw people into the conversation. But as well, we also use social indicators. So on the bottom left there, as you'll recall, when you get your lawn treated by True Green or another company like that, they leave a marker on your lawn. This is the marker that the rain campaign came up with. And again, it's the poking the holes into the urban landscape to hold the water. And so that was replicated in those signs. In fall of 2019, it was pretty soggy. The rain campaign was rained out on multiple occasions, but we set a goal of 50 and exceeded that by 1. We got 51 on the ground. And then spring 2020, we also set a goal of 100 and we exceeded that by 59 with the total of 159. Thank you. So I just wanted to bring this back to you all. Wanted to tell you a couple of the lessons that we've learned and the adjustments that we've made. One is that we know that there are a lot of websites out there. On the one sheet that we created to make things more streamlined for folks, we had 12 different websites for people to go to find out about their city or the practice. And so we created a centralized information hub, which is raincampaign.org. It's a very visually appealing website that has a lot of information on funding, the practices, and so on. So if you haven't checked that out, we would encourage you to do so. We also wanted to simplify the process as well. When we originally started out, we planned on handing a lot of materials over to the cities so that they could create their own public outreach posts. But we found that a lot of cities are just too busy. City staff already have a lot on their plate. So we've gone to the route of preparing outreach for them. So preparing social media posts. We have videos now and things like that that the city can just share the rain campaign or copy and paste rain campaign instead of creating their own. And then we've also been diversifying the partnerships. Recently, we met with the Iowa Ag and Water Alliance. We've had interest from the city of Cedar Rapids on implementing this there. We went to the Home and Garden Show last spring before everything shut down. And we also did a quarantine 12-pack this year. Right at the beginning of the shutdown, everyone was working in their yards, and we wanted to get native plants easily to people. And so we created this quarantine 12-pack with a local grower where people could have these plants shipped right to their home. Next slide. So why am I even telling you this today? Well, one, we are starting to think about as the rain campaign goes out on its own in this pilot project, the pilot stage of this project starts to end. What are we going to do in the future? And so we have found that our flexibility to adapt, being kind of in between all these agencies, has led us to have a lot of success. So we look forward to keeping that in there. We do have a number of soil quality restoration giveaways that are planned for next spring that we'll be promoting in June and January and February, excuse me. And we do have a handful of more trainings and outreach, as well as a virtual garden training and virtual tour. And then again, we're expanding outside the metro. So this was funded to be a pilot project to figure out how we can better communicate stormwater best management practices to the public. And already we've been seeing Ames, Cedar Rapids, and a number of other cities and organizations that have been wanting to incorporate this as well. And so we'll be working with them. So within the next couple of weeks, John Swanson and myself will be reaching out to city staff to re-engage again and discuss what the rain campaign's been doing over the last couple of years, and then looking for input. We took this to the watershed management authorities in October, and just a couple of the ideas that came out of that, we're creating some sort of sustainable funding model, and then keeping this plant sale recurring since it was a big hit. So with that, that's what the rain campaign's been up to, and I would be happy to take any questions at this time.
Allison, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Allison? All right, I hear none. Good work. Item number 14 is a report on the transload facility from Zach.
I want to give you a quick update on where we're at with the transload facility. So you can advance to the next slide. Staff has been working over the last couple of months on some deliverables that were required to submit to the FRA following the signing of the grant agreement. We had to deliver a baseline performance report. This outlined a couple of different metrics that we're going to measure the success of the project by. A quarterly report was due on October 30th. We're going to have to submit a quarterly report to the FRA each quarter, and this was the first one that we've submitted for that. It really just covered 1 month. The ones in the future will be a little more extensive. We had to develop a disadvantaged business enterprise plan. That was due by November 1st. We got that into them in late October. A copy of that plan is included in your agenda packet if you would like to review. Project management plan and a detailed work plan budget. These were kind of the last two big deliverables that we had to complete to satisfy the FRA prior to Des Moines Industrial being able to start submitting reimbursement requests. We submitted drafts in early November and got comments back from the FRA earlier this week. And we've incorporated those comments and we resubmitted the final drafts of both those documents to FRA today. And we got their sign off on those. So now Des Moines Industrial can officially start submitting reimbursement requests for bill grant funds whenever they're ready to do that. They've indicated that they probably won't start submitting those requests until after the first of the year. So all these deliverables have been submitted to the FRA. Des Moines Industrial is working to finalize their land transactions with the railroads as well as the city of Des Moines. The policy committee met yesterday to vote on an advancement of funds to Des Moines Industrial to allow them to close on some work with the Norfolk Southern Railroad. I delivered that check to Paul following the meeting. He was very appreciative of us doing that, and he wanted to extend his thanks to the policy committee for being willing to advance those funds and keep the project moving forward. Other than that, there's still, once the land transactions have been finalized, they're still planning on starting to do groundwork as soon as possible, late November, early December, just as soon as they can get out there and start doing groundwork. They're planning on doing that. So project is moving forward. Everything that we need to be getting into the FRA has been getting into them ahead of schedule. So we're really happy with where we're at right now with this project. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Zach, good work. Anybody have any questions for Zach? I hear none. We'll move on to item 15 is a report on the Purple Heart Highway update from Todd.
Yes, thank you. The report was finished in October. In large part, there was some comments with the DOT that went back and forth with the consultant and got those cleared up, I believe, for the most part. The overall conclusions are the same as in 2012, essentially. There's a few spots that will need design exemptions, but no big red flags. The most significant thing is the costs have come down tremendously from when the report was done in 2012. That's primarily due to changing design criteria. The changes were in our favor in this case, and that some of the things that were being looked at before, we won't have to do. Next slide, please. On this chart, there's the red dots represent farm gate locations, and the kind of the red hashed area on the southeast leg and on the southern legs. Those are where there are some geometric deficiencies that we'll have to get design exemptions from Federal Highway for the conversion process. Overall, nothing too substantial that we have to worry about. The farm gates, we initially thought we would have to do more work on, that they were accessing landowners. But Andy Lunan with the DOT had contacted us earlier this week, and those gates were actually put in at the request of the DOT for maintenance access, not for land access for the landowners. So we probably won't have to address those in quite the same way as we previously thought, and will reduce costs a little bit. This was the original cost estimate back in 2012, almost $35 million in potential costs. Next slide. If you add in the signage change and what we think that alternative access road cost now probably goes away, at least in large part, but all those design exemptions that we were worried about previously also go away. So our costs have dropped to nearly from $36 million to $1 million. We will, I don't know if there's another slide, Gunner, or not. I can't remember. Yeah, thank you. We will be making a request for interstate designation to the DOT in the coming weeks. I'm assuming we'll have to do some little detailed work on the exact termini of the corridor, which is already known. Ask that it be added to the interstate system, identify and justify any design exemptions. AASHTO will essentially approve of a corridor number. We can make suggestions, not that they will do that. There may need to be some additional environmental work on the corridor once we get into the request. I'm guessing it'll be a categorical exclusion since this is a built corridor, but FHWA will determine that. Probably some analysis on the design exemptions. The farm gate access issue, as I mentioned, probably goes away for the most part, and then do some public outreach. Next slide. That would include talking with adjacent jurisdictions, chambers, economic development organizations, landowners, developers, Farm Bureau, and the partnerships have been involved in this process, but they'll remain as part of our outreach efforts as well. So that's where we're at right now. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Todd, thank you. Any questions? Todd, will we do the public outreach before we submit it to the DOT?
We're starting some of that, but the part of the process of the interstate designation will require a public outreach process as well. So there'll be a formal process as well as an informal going on.
Okay. And if we had an ongoing conversation with the Farm Bureau folks?
We've been talking with them. We re-engaged with them at the beginning of the year, actually, and have touched base with them throughout the process.
Okay. A coincidence, I was on the bypass yesterday, and there was a piece of farm equipment that was on the shoulder and in half of one of the lanes going down the road, which
time of year.
It really wasn't that big of a deal to put my signal on and go around it. So I hope that we don't get a whole lot of pushback about that.
Yeah, I think we'll have some discussions with the DOT on that, and but I'm hopeful we can resolve them rather easily.
Okay. Any other questions? Item number 16 is a water trail update. We kind of already done that. So why don't we move on to item number 17 is a report on a legislative update from Dylan.
Thank you. There hasn't been a whole lot of new legislation proposed. Everything just kind of got quiet around the election. There is the HEROES Act that the House passed last month. The Senate has not taken that up. They possibly could still. That has some transit funding in particular as it relates to transportation that would be of importance to the transit agencies around the country. Now that the new administration is coming in, there's been some discussion that there might be another stimulus similar to what was done in 2009 after President Obama took over. They're not sure if that'll happen quite in the same fashion. I was on a call the other day where they talked about some lessons learned from that. Shovel ready didn't quite mean what people thought it meant. So there might be some tweaking of just how that works if it comes to pass, or just could be looped in with some of these other COVID relief bills. So those are really the kind of things they're looking at now. Things might change, obviously, with the new administration, particularly the BUILD program will probably go back to more of what the Tiger program was, being more multimodal and so forth, where the BUILD program has been a little more highway focused. So those are things we'll learn more about in the coming weeks. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Dylan, thanks. Any questions? All right. Next item is a report from Gunnar on the upcoming events.
Good afternoon, everyone. Not a whole lot of upcoming events to share with you today. I would remind everyone of all the great content we have on tomorrowplansspeakerseries.org, where we have a lot of the past speakers from the speaker series whose messages continue to be very relevant. I was on a call before this, and someone replayed some of the portions of the James Chung talk. So please feel free to revisit some of that content as you think ahead. That's it for me, unless you have any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Gunnar? All right. Next item is other non-action items of interest to the committee from anyone.
We have a couple.
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead. Just wanted to let everyone
Oh.
know that earlier or late last month, Joe was awarded the Outstanding Elected Official Leadership Award from AMPO, the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations. So wanted to congratulate Joe on that for his work on at the city and on the region and water trails, as well as a number of other initiatives. So congratulations, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Todd. You know what? We've got a good team here. I appreciate working with my colleagues and the relationships that I've been able to form through the MPO, through the WRA, and just being an elected official. And you know, that's what's made it successful for all of us. I'm humbled that I was able to receive an award like that, and I appreciate you putting me up for that and your team. And you guys do a great job. So thank you.
Go to the next slide. Also just wanted to give a quick update on the TAP and Safe Routes to School. We've been talking about that the past couple months and asked you a couple more touches with people. You can see the list of meetings we've had. The last one that was finished earlier this week was the Trail Advisory Group did a review. They reviewed it for about a week, came back and didn't have any comments or changes that they asked for. So we'll be bringing this back to you in January for approval.
Great. Todd, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. I know
No
that you definitely take, we've got some good answers out of that. And
No worries. That's all we have.
Joe, you're frozen. You know that.
and we'll get together first of the year. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.